Okay, so now we're in chapter 2, and we're going to be in 2.6, which is order of operations. A reminder of what the order of operations are. So we have P, E, M, D, A, S. P stands for parentheses. These include brackets or any other grouping symbols such as fraction bar starting with the innermost set. E is exponents. And then M is multiply. M is multiply and D is divide. Now remember that you can switch the order for multiplication and division, and it goes from left to right. And then A is adding and S is subtracting, and again you can switch the order for adding and subtracting because it goes from left to right. Now, before we start, let's talk about our exponents. So you have to be careful with exponents when you see a parentheses and when you do not see a parentheses. So for example, if I see parentheses -5 close parentheses squared, that means I'm going to take whatever being raised to the second power and multiply it by itself twice. So who's being raised to the second power? -5. Everything that's inside the parentheses is being raised to the second power, which is -5. So this is going to become -5 times -5, which is positive 25. Now, however, -5 squared without parentheses means something completely different. This time, who is being raised to the second power? Just the 5, not the negative sign. If I look at the negative sign, I can think of him as moved out to the front, and then the 5 is the only thing that's being squared. So the the negative is not being squared, just the 5. So remember, the negative stays out front, and then we have 5 times 5, which is -25. Multiply the 5's together. That is how you get 25. And then don't forget the negative is out front. That's how you get -25. So again, be careful with exponents if you see parentheses and when you do not see parentheses. Let's work some examples. So it says simplify. So we're going to do our order of operation. So let's work with up top first. So it says -8 parentheses 3. Remember, when we see parentheses like this, it really means multiply. So that says -8 times 3, which is -24. And then the last thing we need to do is divide this out. So -24 divided by -4 is positive 6. Because remember, a negative divided by a negative is a positive. So this answer is 6. Another example. This time we have 24 plus 19 plus -3 squared. And remember, we're doing our order of operations. So the first thing we're going to do is parentheses. We look inside the parentheses and we have a single number, and it's -3. So we move on, and the next is exponents. So the exponent is 2, is being squared, but who is being squared? Everything inside the parentheses is being squared. So that says -3 times -3. So don't forget to write down the rest of the problem. 24 plus 19 plus, what is -3 times -3? It is positive 9. So we get 9. So now we have 24 plus 19 plus 9. So we just add. So 24 plus 19 is 43. Plus 9 is 52. Okay, so let's work some more examples. Now we have 4 times quantity 5 minus 2 plus 4 squared. Remember, we're doing our order of operations, so we have P, E, M, D, A, S, PEMDAS. P is for parentheses, so this time we look in parentheses and we see 5 minus 2. So we're going to do that first. So now we have 4 parentheses. Well, 5 minus 2 is 3 plus 4 squared. Remember, write down the rest of the problem. Now we move on from parentheses and we see exponents. So that's the 4 squared. So we have 4 times 3 plus 4 squared is the same as saying 4 times 4, which is 16. And then we keep going. Next is multiplication. So we multiply. 4 times 3 is 12. And then we finish it by adding and we get 28. Okay, let's keep going. Negative 5 squared plus negative 7 squared minus 1 to the 3rd power. So before we start, we see exponents everywhere. Let's circle let's circle the number that's being raised to the exponent. So for the first one, it says negative 5 squared, but the negative is not being squared, just the 5. However, for the second one, it says negative 7 squared. This time, the negative 7 is being squared. Remember the parentheses, no parentheses. And then the last one, who's being raised to the 3rd power? Just 1. Okay. So we're going to do our order of operations. So the first thing we're going to do is exponents, because all we have are exponents. Remember, this negative stays. And then we're going to do 5 squared, which is 5 times 5, which is 25. So now I have negative 25 plus, this time I have negative 7 actually squared, so that means negative 7 times negative 7, which is positive 49, minus 1 to the 3rd power. Well, that's 1 times 1 times 1, which is 1. So now we have negative 25 plus 49 minus 1. Let's do our first two numbers together. So negative 25 plus 49. So remember how we add integers. 25 is negative, 49 is positive. If they have different signs, then you're going to take the difference between them. You're going to subtract between them. Subtract and keep the sign of the bigger number. So negative 25 plus 49, well, I would do 49 minus 25, which is 24. And then because 49 was the bigger number and it's positive, it's going to be positive 24. So now we have 24 minus 1. And of course we can finish that by saying it is 23. Great. Okay, another one. So now we have 4 times quantity 6 minus 9 plus negative 6 minus the square root of 49. Okay, so the first thing we do is P, which is parentheses. Parentheses means brackets, square roots, and fraction bars. Well, we see parentheses here, so let's start there. We have to do 6 minus 9. So remember, when you're subtracting, keep the first number, so keep your 6. Instead of subtracting, you're going to add, and then do the opposite of the second number, which is negative 9. So now it says 6 plus negative 9. they have different signs, so I subtract them. I get 9 minus 6. Keep the sign of the bigger number, and you should get negative 3. Okay, then I move down to my square root. The square root of 49, I have to think of a number that when multiplying by himself, I get 49, and it should be 7. Okay, so now parentheses and square roots taken care of. We have no exponents, so let's move on down to multiplication. 4 times negative 3 is negative 12, because a positive times a negative is negative. No division, however, we have adding and subtracting. So let's start from left to right. So we see negative 12 plus negative 6. When they have the same sign, you're going to add the numbers and keep the sign. So add the numbers and keep the sign. So this will become negative 18 minus 7. Remember, when we're subtracting, we really going to add, so keep the first number, keep negative 18, add instead of subtract, and it's the opposite of the second number. So now it says negative 18 plus negative 7. They have the same sign, so we add the numbers and keep the sign, and we get negative 25. Okay, let's do another one. Or actually, I'm going to skip this one. Alright, so now let's move on to our next objective, and that's evaluating expressions. Remember, when it says evaluate, the only thing you need to do is plug in for the variable. So evaluate means plug in for the variable. So it says evaluate 9x squared plus 12 for x equal to negative 3. So everywhere I see an x, I'm going to make it negative 3. Now the first thing I'm going to do is rewrite my x with parentheses. So instead of putting the x there, I'm putting a set of parentheses. And then I'm going to come back and fill in the number for x, which is negative 3. So now it says 9 times negative 3 squared plus 12. Follow our order of operations, and the first thing we need to do is exponent. So leave the 9, and then we have negative 3 squared. This time the negative 3 is the entire thing that's being squared inside the parentheses. So that means negative 3 times negative 3, which is positive 9. So that's 9 times 9 plus 12. Then we move on to multiplication. So 9 times 9 is 81 plus 12. And we finish it by adding, and we get 93. So remember, when it says evaluate, all you need to do is plug in the value that they give you for each variable. You can start by replacing the variable with a set of parentheses and then filling in the number. Okay, last thing we're going to talk about is finding average. So here's an example, is a graph that shows the monthly normal temperature for a town in Alaska. We're going to use this graph to find the average of temperatures for the months January through May. So let's find all of the temperatures for January through May. We see negative 14, negative 16, negative 14, negative 1, and then 20. So how do you find average? Remember, to find average, we're going to add the numbers up and then divide by how many numbers there are. One second. So if average is the sum of the numbers, divided by the number of numbers. So our numbers were negative 14, negative 16, negative 14, negative 1, and then 20. And we're going to find average, so we're going to start by adding all the numbers up. So we have negative 14 plus negative 16 plus negative 14 plus negative 1 plus 20. You can start by adding all the negative numbers together, because remember, when they're the same sign, you just add and keep the sign. So negative 14 plus negative 16, that is negative 30. And then I can keep going. I get negative 44. And then I get negative 45. Now I have negative 45 plus 20. They have opposite signs, so we take the difference. So 45 minus 20 is 25. However, since the 45 is negative, our answer is going to be negative 25. So we have negative 25 for our sum. And then it says, well, how many numbers are there? There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have negative 25 divided by 5, which is negative 5. So the average temperature from January to May was negative 5. One second. We're going to work some additional example problems, maybe 1 or 2. We're now in the book on page 155. And let's look at number 71. And we have negative 5, and then bracket 4 plus 5, parentheses, negative 3 plus 5, all plus 11. And we're going to do our order of operations, because we want to simplify. So the first thing we need to do is parentheses. We see a set of brackets as well as parentheses. You work from the innermost, so go all the way in. And the parentheses on the inside is negative 3 plus 5. So what is negative 3 plus 5? Hopefully you got 2. So don't forget to write the rest of the problem. Okay, so you should have negative 5 bracket 4 plus 5 parentheses 2 bracket, or close parentheses bracket plus 11. Now we have one set of brackets, so we're focusing in those brackets because we're still on P, which is parentheses, brackets, and etc. We look inside our brackets and we see 4 plus 5 times 2. So the first thing we have to do is multiply. So keep your 4. Now you have plus. Well, 5 times 2 is 10. The brackets are still there. Plus 11. Your brackets are still there. Therefore, you're still inside your brackets. So now we need to finish them off by saying 4 plus 10 is 14. So now it's going to become negative 5 times 14. What's going on between negative 5 and the bracket? Multiplication. Plus 11. So now we have negative 5 times 14 plus 11. So of course we're going to multiply first. And we're going to end up getting negative 5 times 14. And that would be negative 70 plus 11. And we finish it off by adding, and you should come up with negative 59. Remember, when you're adding and the numbers have opposite signs or different signs, you take the difference, so 70 minus 11, and then keep the sign of the bigger number, which is 70, and it was negative. Okay, let's look at number 68. And it says 12 minus bracket 7 minus parentheses 3 minus 6, close parentheses, close your bracket, plus 2 minus 3, all to the third power. Okay, so order of operations, first thing first, parentheses, those include brackets, innermost. So I look at these brackets, I look inside, and I see parentheses. They're right here. So let's start there. So we have 12 minus bracket 7 minus, well, 3 minus 6. 3 minus 6, we change it to be 3 plus negative 6, which you should get as negative 3. Okay? 3 minus 6, negative 3. Do not forget to write the rest of the problem. So it's 7 minus negative 3. Close your brackets, plus, well, these are parentheses as well, so I'm going to go ahead and deal with them. 2 minus 3, the same as saying 2 plus negative 3, which you should have as negative 1. So now it's negative 1 to the third power. We're going to keep going. We're still on P, parentheses, brackets, etc. Now it's a 7 minus negative 3. Remember, we change our minus sign to a plus sign, because we're going to add, and do the opposite of the second number. So really it's 7 plus 3, which is 10. Brackets now go away, so we have 12 minus 10, plus negative 1 to the third power. We move on. Now we're on exponents. So we see an exponent, it's to the third power. Who's being raised to the third power? Negative 1. The entire negative 1 is inside parentheses, so it's being raised to the third power. So that's negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1, which you should have as negative 1. So now it says 12 minus 10 plus negative 1. Well, 12 minus 10, that is 2, plus negative 1. They have different signs, so I subtract them and keep the sign of the bigger number, and you should come up with positive 1. Okay, so this will conclude our video for 2.6. Feel free to email me if you have any questions.